The date is March 17, and on this day, 24 years ago, I was born. I was brought into this world. I feel like I came into this world not truly understanding what my life was going to be. I know that sounds strange to hear, but I feel like I'm in the wrong planet 90% of the time. But then I also know I'm in the right planet because I'm here to experience certain things and learn certain things as well. No matter how much it resonates with who I am or it doesn't, I still have to experience these things. And one of these things that I've had to experience on my human journey as a soul, moving through the fabric of reality, is my Africanness. What it means to be African, what it means to be me in many ways, because I did not choose where I was born. I did not choose the community I was born to. I didn't really have any say in how my life was going to turn out based on the circumstances I was presented with in childhood. So my Africanness is something that I've had to really delve into for a long time and try to understand for myself and make meaning of in a world that is always trying to project what they think being African is. And many of us have taken on those identities for our own, and we're suffering for it today. This is African Boy Bible. It's a time capsule in a way. This is a project that I want to create alongside with my art series, Afrophilia X, where I'm exploring the mighty question, what does it mean to be African in this world right now? In the world of AI, what does it mean to be African? In the world of nuclear weapons, what does it mean to be African? In the world of Christianity, what does it mean to be African? And I've had some thoughts that I wanted to share for some time now, so here we are. Even in addressing the question of Africanness and our Africanness, what are we as African? We let's factor in the things that we do know. To be African means to be born on the continent of Africa. Is that even true? I don't think it's true, because I've traveled outside of Africa and I've met way more Africans than I've met in Africa. And these Africans have never been to Africa, but they're the most African people you would ever meet. In terms of the food, in terms of the conversations, in terms of the love, it was so visible to me that what I understood about our Africanness isn't just dictated by where we come from. It's even something on a deeper level. When I could accept that I knew very little of what it meant to be African, I decided to do a little bit of research, because here was myself at, say, 17, out into the world, outside of Africa for the first time, and I'm meeting all of these different people. I am getting like an influx of information and data on the rest of the world that I just did not have prior, coming from my small town in Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, Africa is synonymous to colonization. This has marked our history, it seems like, for the rest of our existence. And we still grapple with the consequences and with the backlash that colonization has brought upon our souls as a people. There is a lot of healing that needs to be done, a lot of healing, a lot of really just pausing the rest of the world, not trying to compete, not trying to participate, not trying to get involved, and come together and really heal from the impact that was colonization and how it has really ruptured the very fabric of what it means to be African on a soul level. It feels like what it means now to be African is answering the question of who were you colonized by. Say the Africans in the US, they were colonized by the Americans. The Africans in Nigeria were colonized by the British. The Africans in Ivory Coast were colonized by the French. And we have all of these different identities that have been wafted into us that has sort of tainted our Africanness on a fundamental level. And this has caused a confusion. It's caused a massive confusion and a global identity crisis, because the first people on the planet What happens when they don't know who they are anymore? What happens when what they are has been taken from them? What happens when their identity fails to correspond with the pain and brutality that was being witnessed? We have some Africans that speak English, we have some Africans that speak French, we have some Africans that speak Spanish, and these Africans that speak these languages do not speak their own native languages. In fact, I am a culprit of this in many ways because I left my country so young that I've lost a lot of my mother tongue. Compared to people that did not even grow up in Africa, I could only imagine. People that, we have so many Africans in Brazil, so many Africans throughout South America, in large numbers, unbelievable numbers of the Africans that are just out there, that are out in the world, but have no core identity on what it means to be African in this world today, because that has been stripped away from us. That has been stripped away from us, and we've been injected with a false idea of who we are, a false idea of how we have to live our lives to be among, in a way. That was such an epic trauma that happened to the soul of the African consciousness that we need to address at some point if we want to answer the question of who are we as Africans and why are we even here. In my mind, I am just a soul that came into the world to experience this human life for however long I'm going to be on this planet for. Not very long. But I was born in this African body, with this African mind, with this African spirit, with these African gifts that are so uniquely African. I feel like I was born to be a creative. I was born to create. I was given so many gifts to create new things in the world and make the world a better place, a prettier, more beautiful place. But then, like, everything in the world doesn't want me to do that. Everything in my reality, it seems like, doesn't want me to do just that. You can be all of these other things you can be, but we don't want you to be your creative self. I could go into that, but that's going to be an episode for another day. But then I look out into the world and I observe and I see there is a misinformation on many levels on who Africans are. And this misinformation seems very targeted and very spiteful, to the point where it has crippled our collective consciousness as Africans on who we are and what we're capable of achieving on our own. It can be so insidious, the narrative of inferiority, the narrative of poverty, the narrative of lack of intellectual capacity. These are things that, even though many people have leveled past this way of thinking, on a collective level, we still share like fundamental programmings on our minds on who we think we are, that the world has projected onto us for so long. And it's painful to watch, honestly. It's painful to watch. Another dimension of this question of answering what does it mean to be African, it's the fact that the concept of being black is thrown into the mix. What does it mean to be black as a person? Why is that a term that we use to describe people of multiple nationalities, if you may? Black. I did not know I was black, like, till I was 19 years old. I did not know I was black. I was an Igbo boy. I was an Igbo boy from Lagos, grew up in Lagos. But when I moved to the US, and of course, that this happens to everyone, every African that leaves their country, you quickly learn that you are not African, you're not Igbo, you're not Yoruba, you are not Hausa, you are not TV, you are not Zulu, you are black. You're just black. That's what you are, you're just black. Oh, you're black. How does it feel to be black? So, walking through life, walking into this new life, feeling very black all of a sudden was quite trippy. I can't I can't even tell you. All of a sudden, I was black. Once I moved to the US, all of a sudden I was black. It felt like whoever I was before now, just throw it away. Now you're black. And now this is how we see black people. This is how you guys are. You can't convince us otherwise. This is just what it is. And one would think, man, what did we do here on this country that made us get such a bad reputation? Like, what did we do? Only to learn that, oh, we actually didn't do anything. Black people have been victimized and brutalized for generations in the American soil. But somehow, the victims are also the villains in this great African story. To be African is to be poor. What does it even mean to be poor in the wealthiest continent on the planet? The most resource rich. Even if we don't have any resource, even if we don't have zero natural resources, we have people in numbers that are strong. That is the greatest labor resource ever. Untapped. But somehow we are poor. Africa is synonymous to poverty, to the point when if you represent anything other than that, you are a threat to the story that we've created about Africa and what Africa is. This story that many Africans have bought, this story that many Africans have internalized and have become, the story of our inferiority, the story of our impoverishedness, the story of our lack, the insecurity, the uncertainty of our core identities or values even. The spirit of community is being broken down by these narratives on a daily basis. It's been breaking down since their feet came to our shores. So, what does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be African in this world today? What does it mean to be African? That is just what I'm thinking. That is all I think about. Because is it my identity as a person? Is it my history that makes me African? Is it my beliefs? Is it the food that I eat that makes me African? Is it all of these things that make me African? Then, if so, why doesn't the things that make me African correspond with what the world accepts as African? I'm not here to please the world in any way, but it's an interesting question to think about. If the world perceives Africa in such damaging ways, and how this perception, this illusion has taken root in our minds to the point that it has stagnated our consciousness and our advancement as a people. And the only way to really uproot ourselves from this thinking is collectively. It has to be on a collective level. It can't be on an individual level. I can do all the healing work I can do on myself, but it's not going to really impact the consciousness in a way that it would be collectively if we all came together with the understanding of what it really meant to be African. I feel like I meet my brothers every single day. And it brings me to tears because, like, the other day I was in the Apple store testing out the Vision Pro, and the guy that was talking about the technology with me, just walking me through all the steps, heard my accent, and he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Lagos, Nigeria." And he was like, "Oh, no way." He just had like his 23andMe back, and he's like 10% Nigerian, and he's really curious about that part of his identity. And he shows me where he's from on the map, and he's Igbo. On the map is just like one giant Igbo. I am also Igbo, and he just felt like, oh, I am meeting my brother. You are not even American. You are from a different country. So, but talking with him, having that conversation, learning about this technology with my fellow Igbo man in America made me question, what does it mean to be African? Because you, my friend, you are the most African person I've ever met, but you've never been to Africa. You don't even know the first thing about what Africa is like. There is a fundamental fabric within us that is authentically African, and I feel like we should all find it, for ourselves. In the past, before our trials and tribulations happened to us, we were more in touch with this part of us that was more authentic, more fluid, more free-flowing, more creative, more adaptive, to the point where in every community there were always people always branched out into different groups and created their own subcultures within a bigger culture. The level of fluidity, the level of expansion, the level of integration is what it means to be African. To be integrated with nature, to be integrated with our spiritual beliefs, to be integrated with our familial values. Those are the threads that tie us across the continents, across the world as Africans. Those threads of who we are on a foundational level. And who we are, the truth of who we are, is in direct contrast with what the world says we are. What the world sees us as is traumatized. But nobody's asking why or what caused the trauma. What caused the trauma response, basically, to the African consciousness, to the African identity on a spiritual, deep level. What does it mean to be African? I feel like our parents don't even know what it means to be African anymore, because our parents, their generation specifically, came at a time in the world when there was chaos. It was free for all. This is the most chaotic the world has ever been. The world wars were coming to a close. Borders were beginning to form. Alliances were beginning to form. The job market transformed. This wasn't a world where just feeding your family with your farm crops is going to suffice anymore. The needs just grew more and more. And their parents were not able to meet up with these changes and these advancements, and the instability in the structure of our world was crumbling because there were new powers, there was new technology, there was new infrastructure being built into our world on a foundational level. And our parents were so handicapped in these situations that they were put in survival mode for a bulk of their lives, just working to feed us. The questions of what does it mean to be African? What values am I passing on to my children that they're going to take on with them into the world? What is that African gift that I'm giving my child? Because this gift, African gift, is something that has been passed down for generations and generations, but stopped at some point, and there is a void. There is a void of an identity crisis that needs to be addressed. I feel like the universe put me in isolation for the past 3 years. I've really not had a single friend in a while, and I have stayed with myself a lot, and in this period I've gone crazy because I started to hear my ancestors. I started to hear them. So maybe craziness, whatever, how the world describes that as, but they have taught me a lot about myself in this past 3 years. And they've taught me so much that I could not have learned in school, and I did not learn from my community or my parents because I really did not grow up with a strong foundational system. But my ancestors have come in to fill in that gap on the consciousness level. They have told me in the most part, that being African is really just being myself in a world that doesn't really care what you are. Just being yourself, being authentic, being who you are. And I am so proud of who I am as a person because of my ancestors and what they have achieved in their life, in their lifetimes, what they survived. I'm in awe of the people that came before me, what they survived, what they went through, and how they survived, and how they thrived, and how I am a product of an unsurvivable event. I survived. I'm here right now in my Africanness. I can sit down and philosophize about what it means to be African. So I wear my ancestry on my chest like a badge of honor, because it is. My ancestors chose to drown than to be enslaved. And I carry that spirit within me today. I would choose to drown than to be enslaved by anybody. What does that mean about my Africanness? What does that mean on a core level about my Africanness? Do I share that with somebody out there? My brothers, do they share that spirit? Do they understand the gravity of what they represent in the world and why the world is what it is? Willing to deny the truth, because if they deny it so much, we will stop seeing it and we won't recognize the beauty in who we are. There is so much history and there is so much knowledge that our ancestors carry with them. And these morsels, they hold the truth of who we are. Our ancestors are the ones that lift that truth of who we are. And even though now in our current reality, we might struggle to find that, but that truth lives with our ancestors, and they can tell you a lot of things. For one, gender, as we understand it today in our world, isn't something that could be conceptualized by people in the past. They couldn't conceptualize that a man was that much different from a woman. It was such a flat out, everybody held both energies within them, and the growth of the community was being prioritized at that stage of evolution. That life is what has led to the life that we have today, where we have such hard labels on masculinity and femininity and what it means to be a man, what it means to be a strong man, what it means to be a feminine woman, and how those roles present in the family system and how those roles present in the community, and how that has evolved over time to where we are at now, where that is devolving pretty quickly. We are floundering, trying to grasp onto something that can really anchor us into who we are. And I think the answer is our ancestors. Our ancestors, because they're all the same people. Like, every black person you see on the street is your brother. They share blood with you. Every single black person, at some point in history, we all share the same grandparents. I think that is beautiful to think about. So what does that mean for our Africanness? I fantasize about a time in the far past when we revered our feminines, our African feminines, our African beauties, our African queens. When we revered them, when we would fight wars, hunt lions, presenting the heads of lions to our queens, asking for their hands. Why did we lose that? Why did we lose touch of how we adored and revered our women in exchange of the Western patriarchy? Why did we sacrifice our adoration and the protection that we gave our women in exchange for validation from the patriarchy, the Western patriarchy? Women held a different kind of power than men. We have to realign with we have to realign with the foundational aspects of who we are on an individual level, and hopefully we can come together as a collective mind to figure out the question of what does it mean to be African. I can tell you what it would mean for me to be African. I want to live in a world as an African where every black person on the planet has a single passport, has a single ID. That is something that I would want to experience in my lifetime. I want to live in a world where every single black person has a single passport and a single ID, and they can go to any of the countries that black people are for free. Because it's practically one city. Yes, it could be a few across the ocean, but it's still Africa. A world where Africa isn't just dictated by borders or the continent, but dictated by the spirit the African spirit that lives within all of us Africans. And that spirit is dying. I'm going to be honest with you. That spirit is dying. That spirit, the fire, the African fire that we have, that we've always had, is dying. And it's dying because of trauma. Trauma that has gone unhealed for centuries. Trauma that we have to start talking about. Traumas that we have to start integrating, for better or for worse, because we can't escape it. The world is advancing so much faster than we can even comprehend. I feel like I've been blessed with the privilege of being in the forefront of this technological advancement, and I'm watching how fast things are advancing on a daily basis. And there is no African to be seen anywhere. It breaks my heart to feel like we are not left behind, because we can never be left behind, but we are stuck, we're stagnant, we're paralyzed by victimization, and we can heal. We can heal from it, and we can reclaim the joys of what it means to be African, regardless of how the external world presents. I wish I could have told my younger self that, especially, that your Africanness, who you are, fundamentally remains, no matter what the world says or no matter what the world does. I could literally go on and on philosophizing about these questions. What does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be Igbo? What does it mean to be an Igbo boy that grew up in Lagos? What does it mean to be an African growing up now in America? What does that mean for my future self that hopefully is going to be hella African? So, dear future self, this is the dilemma of the world that we have right now, where there hasn't been a core African identity for a while, for a very long while. And I am working very hard to not just ground the history of my people within myself, but to also embody that and use that to push myself forward. And the story of Africa is a story of triumph above all else. It's a story of triumph, it's a story of survival, it's a story of accomplishment, ingenuity, creativity, and just pure excellence. It's so underrated, but as an African that moved to the US and seen up close how the Africans in the US developed and evolved over time, seeing how what they've done with their Africanness under the circumstances that they were placed under, how they thrived, how they became successful, how they created new waves of art that has impacted the world. Like, it's a story of triumph, and it's a story that, like, really makes me emotional to think about, because on a daily basis and experiencing things like racism, prejudice, the limiting beliefs just imposed on us by the world, you can easily lose track of what it truly means to be African. And what it means to be African is to be love. What it means to be African is to be strength. What it means to be African is to be beautiful. So stunningly beautiful. Like, we are the most beautiful people ever. Future self, there is a lot of conflict within the energies of masculinity in our communities. There's a lot of conflict between the masculines and the feminines. There's a lot of conflict with how masculines can understand themselves within a world that doesn't understand them. And we are an observer. We are observing at this point in time. I am the observer because I am not involved in any of it. I just observe. And the question that keeps haunting me is, what does it mean to be African? What does that mean? This is African Boy Bible. I hope you liked what I shared. Like, subscribe, follow my podcast wherever you get podcasts. I'm on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, just wherever. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am an artist. I love making art, and I have so much to share. You guys don't even know. So follow me everywhere. I'm Patrick Chuka. I did not even introduce myself. Like, my name is Patrick Chuka, but you can call me Chu. I'm 24 years old. I'm in the US, but I'm from Lagos, Nigeria, like I've said. And this is just a project alongside my other art projects. And to really experience the breadth of my creativity, you really have to just immerse yourself in my world and just go along with what I'm saying, because it's going to make sense in the end.